Yo, my peoples, what's up? Welcome to 5 and 5 in the One Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of the game in about 5-ish minutes. That's a lie. It's going to be a little bit longer than that. The game I'm going to talk about today is Tiny Epic Dungeons. This is the 11th Tiny Epic game from Gameland Games. It is a cooperative game of 2 to 4 players in which we are adventurers. We are going to delve into an ever-expanding dungeon. We're going to get fat loots. We're going to defeat the bosses. So I would like to tell you whether I think this game packs enough dungeon crawling punch in its tiny package to satisfy dungeon crawling fans out there. I'd like to offer a disclaimer. I was provided a review copy of this game. My number 5 is Tiny Epic Symbology. For every Tiny Epic game, it's worth asking the question, could this be a bigger game? Did they shove too much game into that tiny package? The way that Tiny Epic Dungeons accomplishes so much gameplay in a small package is with all of these symbols. So this is the rule book. You got a list of symbols over there. This is one of the character sheets. More symbols. These operationalize the characters and the rooms and the enemies and all that kind of thing. This isn't even enough. There is a PDF on their website, the Gameland Games website, that shows all the interactions and the cards and all that kind of thing. I gotta admit, I struggled learning this game over multiple groups, multiple playthroughs. It took me a while to really feel comfortable with all of the symbology. In addition, as you can see, it's very cramped. So there are a few games out there like Terraforming Mars or Race for the Galaxy that present a lot of symbology, but they're bigger games and there's more room. Here, everything is very tightly packed. On the positive side, once I got it, I felt comfortable and I could run this game pretty effectively, but it was definitely a chore getting there. So I wanted to highlight that for folks who might be interested in the on-ramp to a game like this. My number 4, going along with the motif of Tiny Epic, is the dice system. You are going to be rolling these dice to do basically anything. Skill checks and attacks, all that kind of thing. This really is so much of the center of the game, and it's really, really good. So a lot of adventure games accomplish their variability by adding more dice, adding more sides to the dice, D10s, D20s, etc. Here, you only get these 3 hero dice. You roll and you have your main number. Some of the sides you'll be able to supplement. So in case you want those bigger numbers, that would represent 8. And you also have these lightning bolt symbols here. If you don't use that for an addition, you can get a little bit of power up right there. So you can manipulate your focus or your magic system that way. This enemy dice also interacts in various ways with the timer of the game. These dice are well integrated with every single part of the game. Very, very small package. I think that this was really, really well done. A positive for me. My number 3 is the variability, mostly created by so many heroes, so many bosses, interacting with the items and the spells and whatnot. So you have your heroes, and they mostly feed off of archetypes. So you have your rogue, you have your wizard right there, and your fighter. Very, very simple, with simple powers, and all of these characters iterate off of those 3 archetypes. 8 in the base game along with 4 monsters, and then you have 8 in the expansion, 4 more monsters. Variability out the wazoo. Even though there are those archetypes, I feel like each character does a little bit of something different to stand out. So you're going to have some varied play each time you go in there. On the negative side, lots of corner cases, lots of different wrinkles where you're going to sit there wondering, am I doing this right? When does this proc? I'm doing this, but what does the boss do this first? There's a lot of that. Even 4 or 5 times in, I'm still checking the rule book, checking the FAQ to see if I'm doing it right. So very much buyer beware mix for me, all this variability. My number 2, another mix for me, is the exploration aspect of the dungeon. You're going to begin at the staircase. It will be the only tile revealed. There will be 4 tiles face down just like this. But then as you progress through the game, you're going to open things up one room at a time. That turns out to be fun in the sense that you can kind of mold your dungeon a little bit. You can, twist these around and create corridors. Once you get to know the layout of the dungeon, then you can kind of race around and, set up little death traps for your goblins. You're going to get portals that happen, and also the items that pop up too that let you bounce around from place to place. So at the beginning it feels a little bit cramped, but by the mid to end game you're flying around. That's very satisfying. The part that I don't like is this thing, the goblins. When you enter a room like this, you will spawn a goblin, and there are lots of goblins to spawn, tons of them. And they're basically loot bags. So then they're going to pop up, you're going to kill them, and then you're going to get loot. You're going to pop up, kill them, you're going to get loot. It becomes pretty grindy after a while. Eventually you won't be able to kill them when they start to pile up a little bit. Still, at that point, they become kind of a chore. They're not that interesting. And so they turn what could be really fun exploration into that grind that a lot of dungeon crawlers that are loot-based fall into. I'll note that there is an expansion called the Stories expansion. So then in the base game, you're just opening rooms and looking for whatever you're looking for. In the expansion, you get these little side quests. So you can go to the portal and do a thing. Go to the scribe pool and do a thing. Rescue and adventure and escort quest. If you are a little bit bored with the basic geometry of the game, then go ahead, throw in the Stories expansion. Not necessary because they don't add too much in terms of reward. They're there to jazz up this mid-game when you're walking out and exploring this dungeon. My number one is the payoff. What do you play dungeon crawlers for? You want to get your loot. You want to have big turns where you use all your powers and defeat the bad person. Whoever is haunting the land, this game does that for you. You have your normal items that you'll be gathering throughout the game, like your Everlit torch and your bedrolls. Don't laugh at bedrolls. I won a game with that once. Anyway, the main show are these sets that you can get. So Robes of the Phoenix, Spell Tome, and Ring. As you get more sets, Phoenix and Bear and Viper, all that kind of thing, you get more powerful. You're going to get spells. You're going to get potions. Potions is a mini expansion, but I recommend playing with the potions every time. They're one-shots, and they really change the game a lot. So shuffle in potions. Put all that together and you'll be able to take down the baddies. I have the dragon over here, and there's mind flayers and all the usual things you would want to see in a dungeon crawler. This one has 8 points per character. So then it would be 2 or 16 for a 2-player game, 32 in a 4-player game. So you are going to have to be powerful, and this game does that for you. The climax of the game is very cinematic. The mechanisms make sense. Once again, it's a little bit hard to learn because it's basically like a new game facing the boss, but once you get that down, it's very satisfying. So the ending is good, which makes up for a lot of what it took to get there. Final thoughts time. Tiny Epic games tend to run a spectrum. The best of them are smooth and easy to get into, and they pack a very satisfying punch for the small package. The ones that struggle tend to have a lot crammed in. You feel that crowded sense when you're playing. This one is going to go either way. It's not going to be for everybody. I do think on the negative side that they do try to cram a lot in, and I think that's going to hit a lot of people's thresholds pretty early, especially all those symbols. You're going to have lots of cards where it's like 2, 3, 4, 5 symbols in a row. How do they interact? How does this interact over there? I can barely read it. There's going to be a lot of folks at your table that are probably not going to enjoy the experience for that reason. On the other side, once you overcome that barrier, once you kind of sink in, kind of like a foreign language, you sink into that symbology, sink into what the game is presenting. It's actually a lot of fun to be had, and especially climax. That's what you're going for. You're playing Diablo or another kind of video game where you go into the dungeon as a weenie, and then you gear up and you're big, hulking, and powerful, and you feel it. That's what this game does, probably better than anything else it does, which is mechanically it delivers that feeling of being very powerful and able to, overcome any challenge within the game system. So I definitely think this is kind of in the middle amongst the Tiny Epic series. Not the best one, not the worst one, but I think it's an interesting experiment, a worthy entry into the series. This is Jason reminding you that we will see you at the next stop.